This is one of our most exciting enterprises here. I will say that, as we've mentioned, although Asia has two-thirds of the world's population, less than 10% of the Nobel Prizes have gone to Asians, less than 10% of the MacArthur Genius Awards, less than 10% of the curated TED Talks. So these are our Nobel Prize winners. These are our MacArthur Geniuses. These are our TED Talk stars. These are the ones we want the world to see. And as you know, in Asia Society Style, they're across all the different pillars. So thank you, and we're so thrilled to have you here. You're with the Asia Society family here. Tonight you'll be with the world, but we're glad to have this moment. I'm going to ask just a couple questions common to all, and hopefully we'll have a moment for any of you who have a pressing question. In the world, it is not actually uncommon to have brilliant ideas that can change the world for the better. It is very rare to have someone courageous enough to implement those ideas, whether they're in business, art, or policy, or other areas. And so I'd like to ask each of you, when you decided to take your idea and go and actually build it into something, what drove you internally, and what was your biggest challenge in doing that, and how did you overcome that? Soo-Man, can we start with you? Yes.
Anyways, I'm honored to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me to this honorable place and with honorable people. So I don't know what to say. So actually, I didn't know that.
You were a singer, and then you decided to create.
I was yes.
Why did you decide to?
Actually, I used to be a singer in 1970s. So I was very popular and so kind of very. I was cute and
Fashionable.
Yes. They call me kind of an idol star at the time. All right. They did it. I don't know. So I just heard like that, believe it or not. At the time, I was studying in Seoul National University. So my major was agriculture engineering. Then at the same time, I did the MC, like a TV show host with my name, and I made my own songs and a lot of hit songs, really big. You don't believe it. Anyway, some songs made by me and sung by me. So after the graduation, I decided to go to the States to study some more. So I changed my major. So the IT world was coming at the time. So I decided to study, computer. So I studied again the electronic engineering and master degree in computer engineering. It was very hard for me, but at the time the MTV was starting. So everybody was, crazy about, so like instead of radio, they turn on the TV in living room, then started in each room or stay in each room. So our housemate or classmate there. So if something, so being played outside in living room, then they went out to see who is singing. And so like at that time, the Michael Jackson. That was a big hit, like a moon gliding, so like the dance was really, really shock and a big hit. So at the time, so like from the radio music to the video killed the star, radio star. So it's changing at the time. So I decided to go. After the graduation, after I got so master's degree. I decided to go back to my country in Asia because so falling behind, too much falling behind in culture and especially music field. So I went back. Before I went to the States, I was studying at the time. As I told you, I was very popular, really. please. So the other the pop stars, they came to Seoul and they had a concert. Then I had a concert too, but their concert, so the ticket price was higher than mine. So why? And many stars came to Korea, at the time, so I don't know if you remember, Leif Garrett. So Leif Garrett was there. So I went to the concert hall and I saw how he's doing. So he's doing good, very well. That the audiences were crazy about him. So, oh wow. So I thought at that time, how come Korean singers not popular in outside my country? So it can be, done, or maybe I can do it. So even when I was studying in the computer engineering here, then I saw many clips and I saw what's going on in the music industry. So I went back. So I decided to make kind of a team or singers. I decided to produce the songs and to produce so new teams like kind of boy band, like Idol Stars. So the goal was that so I want to go out, so to expand my career, the entertainment, Korean entertainment, into the global market. So I went to the China first, 2000. So it was really, really successful. So that's the first Korean wave. It's called first Korean wave. Then I decided, it'll take too long in China, maybe to make a kind of the big market. Not yet, but it was very meaningful to have a concert in China first. Then everybody says, wow, it's a kind of a revolution, or it's a shock to young people, even much more to the adults. So the Korean wave, so it's a kind of scandal in the paper. So the old guys they worried about the young guys. How come they're so crazy about Korean singers? So what do we have to do? So that's called Korean wave. Is that section was like a social section, what's it called? It's a column was in there, not in entertainment column. So they worry about the future. So then I thought this, okay, if I'm gonna do that in Asia or in the globally, then I have to decide. I have to compete with the best singers or best musics in Asia first. So I went to Japan. So at the time, BoA was 10 years ago. We trained. So I have her learn English and Japanese language. So after 3 years, 4 years, maybe 5 years, she made a really, really big hit in Japan. So she's good. So she's still with me in my SM Entertainment. So that's my start.
So Soo-Man, can I ask you, so 25 years ago, if Korean popular music was really a zero market in the world, today what size is it? What size is this wave that you created?
So still the Korean market is almost the same. Even
the global market for Korean.
But because of the global market, actually my company cannot survive, only the incoming only in Korea. So it's very hard these days because it's 2000. It started. The illegal download was there, so collapsed. All the industries collapsed. But why I could survive is so I was in Japan. So we expand to Japan and Thailand, and nowadays even Indonesia. So we can make profit So we were very dangerous that more than 4 years. So after that time, in that time, all the, the industry collapsed in Korea. So maybe this, maybe 10 times than before. Yes,
Thank
globally.
You. Excellent, yeah.
Maybe more than 10 times, maybe.
So Marita, hold on. Tell us about the birth of Robogals.
So I come from a place called Cairns in Queensland, and it's like a 2.5-hour plane ride to the nearest city with over 1 million people. So it's very remote in that sense. From my graduating class of 200, there were only 3 girls who went on to study engineering. But because it was such a small and remote place, I thought that when I got to Melbourne, there'd be heaps of people just as passionate and enthusiastic about engineering as I am. And I was really surprised when I found there were only 5 girls in my class out of 50 studying mechatronics engineering and computer science. And I later found out that in industry, only 10% of engineers are women. In my second year at university, I decided to start building a robot with my friends, and we went to the head of the electrical engineering department to ask for some funding. And he said he was interested in getting a group of students together to go to a school to teach girls robotics in order to get them interested in engineering. And I went away and thought, I can actually make a difference to the number of girls in my class. And if we're going out and teaching one school, why don't we just teach at all the schools? And so during my exam period, I started making lists and thinking about what to do and recruiting my friends. And I recruited 24 of my friends, and 3 of them showed up. And we started designing our robotics workshops and calling schools and getting even more people involved. And in 3 weeks, we had 60 volunteers on board from the university. And in the first 3 months, we taught 124 girls from 6 schools around Melbourne. And after that, I actually left Robogals Melbourne to run without me and went to Imperial College in London to study mechanical engineering there. And while I was over there, I thought it would be great if Robogals was here in the UK, then we could be global. But London is a very big place for someone from somewhere as small as Cairns, and so it was very overwhelming being there. But after about 3 months, I thought there's nothing like Robogals here in the UK, and if I want to make a difference to my engineering classes, I need to be the one to do it, because there were 15 girls out of 150 in my mechanical engineering class. There were 4 girls out of 120 in computer science. There were 2 girls out of 70 in aerospace engineering. And there weren't many girls at Imperial at all. So I sent out emails to people, and no one came to the first Robogals meeting in Imperial. And so I cried. And then no one came to the second one. And so I cried again. But then for the third one, I emailed everyone and said, oh, we had a really productive meeting those first 2 times. When are you free again? And we had 4 people show up to the third one, and we went from there and started up that UK chapter. And while I was in the UK, I noticed that a lot of student organisations weren't just in one place, but they were national, because the UK is so tiny. It's really easy to just pay £10 and go from London to Bath or London to Birmingham, and a windsurfing club in London could collaborate with a windsurfing club in Birmingham very easily. And I thought, if Robogals was national in Australia, we could have a national impact, not just in Melbourne. And so I started planning that while I was in the UK, and I spent 6 months liaising with 4 other universities in Australia. And 2 months after I came back, we expanded to 4 universities in Australia. And that went so well that 6 months later, I returned to the UK and expanded to another 5 chapters there. And since then, we've just been expanding around the world and reaching even more people. And we've reached 60,000 girls now. And we have a great community of young female engineering students from all over the world who are really passionate about making a difference and collaborating with similarly minded peers.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to go to our 2 music game changers now, who both have used music to try to transform lives in war zones. And Ahmad is from Afghanistan and lost 90% of his hearing in 2014 when there was a Taliban suicide strike. And Karim is from Iraq. And so I'd like to ask both of you, why music? Why is it important when the world's falling apart and falling down? And what is the power of music to transform lives?
I'm a strong believer in the power of music, and that's why when I finished my PhD in Monash University, Australia, I decided to go back to Afghanistan. Because Afghanistan is one of the countries which in our time music was entirely banned. And the people of Afghanistan have been deprived from a very basic human rights, and also they lost their musical identity. That's a country where cultural genocide took place in our time. You all remember the destruction of the Buddhas of Bamyan, destruction of the arts affecting Kabul Museum, and destruction of music tapes that have been hanging in all squares of Kabul. But with my strong belief in the power of music, I returned to Afghanistan first in 2006 after spending 15 years in Australia. And then I returned in 2008 for good to Afghanistan. I believe in a country like Afghanistan, which has been almost 40 years in war, we need most than anything the healing power of music. The people of Afghanistan, in one another way, they've been impacted by war. And music can enormously contribute to the healing process of this traumatized nation. Also, in our time, Afghanistan has been badly divided on ethnic basis. Afghan politicians, in order to rule, they divided the country in order to stay in power. I strongly believe that music can significantly contribute to the reunification of Afghanistan. And that's why we are focusing on the music education of the kids, and our program is co-education. Through music, we are making a small contribution towards establishing civil society in Afghanistan and also bringing peace to this nation and reunification of Afghanistan. I strongly believe when Afghan kids, boys and girls from all parts of Afghanistan sitting in an orchestra, patiently listening to each other, supporting each other, getting engaged in dialogue musically, and by the end they create a wonderful piece of music together. It also teaches them to respect each other's differences outside of the orchestra and to live in Afghanistan in peace and harmony. I also strongly believe that music can play a significant role in transformation of Afghan children and youths, and make us a great contribution to poverty alleviation in Afghanistan. And that's why we've got a strong focus on disadvantaged children of Afghanistan, youth, orphans from orphanages, street working children, and girls. We begin our program in 2010 with only one girl. But today we have got 70 girls, which is 1/3 of the school community. And the girls are represented in every small and large orchestra of our school. Plus everything else, last year we initiated the first ever all-female orchestra of the region, not only in Afghanistan. For Afghanistan, that is a revolution, but also for the region. And also we introduced the first female conductors of Afghanistan. And with this group, we will be traveling to the World Economic Forums, not far, just in a couple of months. And also through music, we connect Afghanistan once again to the international community. We've got a number of projects which enables us to bring musicians from around the world to facilitate an intercultural dialogue between Afghanistan and the international community, but also to show the better side of Afghanistan through music. You've been asking about the challenges. Mm-hmm. From the very beginning, it was significantly important to convince the Afghan government and the donor community in Afghanistan to invest in arts and culture. I clearly remember my conversation with the Australian ambassador in Afghanistan after I was we've been talking for 45 minutes. What should be done in Afghanistan to bring peace and stability? And I was talking about the importance of arts and culture, and particularly music. And by the end of 40 minutes of conversation, he was telling me that music is a luxury for Afghanistan. So it was the toughest job for me was to convince the Afghan politician and the donor community to invest in music. Plus, bureaucracy was a challenge, and security is, while 6 years ago the security was not an issue, but the success of the music school, our national and international presence, also awakened the radicals and the extremists who banned music once in Afghanistan. And that's why now we are working and creating within a very tight security situation. And I'm very grateful to the parents and to the guardian of the children who know that the children are risking their life to study in a music school, which is a target of the extremists. But still, in spite of these challenges, without any fear, they're allowing their boys and girls to study in music.
Incredible story. How about in Iraq? Is it a different story or similar challenges?
Surprisingly, it's first of all, Dr. Sarmast.
And they met for the first time here, even though they...
Thanks to Asian Society, we were supposed to be meeting 5 years ago. Some of the things that Dr. Ahmed had mentioned are very similar to Iraq, and seems to be very similar regionally to that part of the world. To include the continuous sense of uncertainty that is relevant to war and disagreement and instability due to political instability, and then on and on for hundreds of years. But in Iraq, it was more of why, not only how. I believe people are energy fields, and as fields of energy, it can be positive, it can be negative, and to a higher extent. People were drawn away from creativity, from compassion, from integration, from mutual understanding, due to either political monopoly or circumstantial and situational changes in their lives. So my belief was creating a brand, was creating a trend. I totally believe in what you heard after these 45 minutes. It can be a luxury. But instead of disregarding that luxury, I was alleviating, helping the populace and the society towards more self-esteem, self-worth, self-realization, and I was dealing with everyone as an elite, whether they understood why they should be or they didn't. It was about a choice. So through music, I believed integration, compassion, awareness, consciousness, a higher level of awareness, a higher level of understanding and knowledge can be achieved at the grassroots level, can be a very instrumental way to utilize talents that people in some cases did not realize that they had, especially in war times. I remember in '91, before leaving Iraq again, back to Europe and then to the US, surviving the 80s in Baghdad was not bad culturally. We had many galleries, more than any other Middle Eastern country, probably except for Israel. Concerts were given every month. It was not politicized as much as people would think. There was free culture and free arts. It was not yet at where it is right now, and where Afghanistan was since the Taliban took over in the 70s and so forth. So it was more about how to sustain peace and how to re-establish and recreate those creativity spots in everybody's soul. It was about reaching to the soul of people, whether they're Christians, Jews, Muslims, Sunni, Shia, agnostic, Yazidis, and we know in Iraq we have everything. Every sort of ideology and religious thought and belief, to include atheism and agnosticism. So it was very important to help everyone to rise above their own limitations and the limitation of the situation, and then realize how important they can be through music. And basically that included the younger generation. So other than conducting the symphony and directly utilizing our efforts towards the society, and I proudly witnessed the day when I was conducting with 13 families attending in 2006 because of the ethnic cleansing and civil war in Baghdad, all the way to conducting with at the venue where no more empty seats were available, with 1,200 people attending from every sector and every sector. This was included with my program of Peace Through Arts, which is an NGO, non-governmental, non-for-profit, and also a 501c3 registered here in the US. Peace Through Arts was about how we can achieve all that, and how we can secure a certain concept to sustain development in connection to economical growth, capacity building, human resources, and facing terror and instability with refinement, cultivation, and civilization. And that's why I grabbed my cello and went to car bomb sites and performed. It was a proactive measure. It was not a reactive. If we were reacting to terror, we would be really late. So the idea is it is a global universal language. It is a language that has to do with spirit. It has to do with science. It has to do with also empowering ourselves, empowering self-esteem, self-worth, self-realization, and the ability to help people to overcome the obstacles of instability, whether they are war or peace in some cases. We have instability through peace. We have economical instability. We have worries. We have uncertainties. We have markets that merging. We have markets that are. We have jobs that not anymore important. We have jobs that are, So the idea was to help everyone share this luxury of being able to have access to this luxury of that everybody had the right to be exposed to, and doing that at the grassroots level, and also managing to create the will of survival, the dedication and the determination in the society to beat terror through refinement and beauty.
Thank you. Wow. Durreen, you were quite audacious in Bangladesh to think about the power of technology to transform the lives of women who were in disaster zones, and to create the power of social enterprise. When did you first have that thought? And how far can technology take us to solve these problems in society and social enterprise?
Right. I always say I'm looking at the group here, and everyone's so inspiring. And I think I'm thinking, when you come to sort of, I guess, an older age like myself, there's always a nice story, looking back. So I guess we sort of create these wonderful narratives. But I think that when I actually think back, frankly, a lot of the things I did in life were sheer sort of desire to get out from where I was. So I think it's as simple as that. So I think growing up in sort of post-war Bangladesh, and for those of you who don't know, we had a very bad war in 1971. About 3 million people were killed. So I think for me, growing up in the post-war Bangladesh was really almost reflection of a country that was being rebuilt very haphazardly by development money. And then also sort of growing up as a girl, in a restrictive Muslim country. For me, those were sort of almost a reflection of each other. So I think for me, it really was, no matter how, I had to get out of it, because I knew what kind of the future was for me. So I think when people actually ask me, God, what motivated you? I'm like, simple fact, I just wanted to get out of it and really be doing something that, I knew that I could change the system. So now the interesting thing is, I think for me, the fact that I could make my path and come here for my university, a lot of people, when they do the same thing, and there are many, America is the story of immigrants, and many people have that story. But for me, the thing was, I actually wanted to go back. So it's almost like I knew I left that, but I wanted to go back to it and do my part to change it. So I always say, and I think I was sharing the story with some of the people here, and when I was out of college, I went into Morgan Stanley, and listen, I could have just stayed there. This what I worked for. But for me, that was not what I wanted. For me, that was a surreal experience where I saw the power of finance. And I basically said, I need to take it back. And that's what I did. And I think my entire career after that was based on this Morgan Stanley experience and going to Grameen Bank, which at that point was a small little entity, no one knew about it, pretty much shaped the rest of it. And I think, so it really became a quest to bring the two together. And I will say, it really was sort of one of those Mission Impossible. But I think that's what I guess all of us here represent, which is really taking on that Mission Impossible and just saying, how do you create a structure for everyone else to walk on, right? Creating that road for everyone else to walk on.
I love that. Mission Impossible. Well, Sanduk, you've taken on a Mission Impossible, which is you don't like blindness, and you have declared yourself the transformer of that situation. There's a new book out about your work. We have Her Royal Highness, Princess Beatrice of the United Kingdom, joining us tonight because she's so in love with what you've done and your story. So please tell us, how many eyes are you going to be able to transform in your life? And have we seen the model, or is it going to get a lot bigger?
I'd like to first thank the Asia Society for giving us this privilege, and to let you know that I am both by profession and by passion an eye doctor. And it was many years ago, about 30 years ago, when particularly the most common cause of blindness, which is cataract, was treated in two categories. The West and the industrial countries had sophisticated state-of-the-art surgery where patients could see pretty well. And all of the developing country had a different second-class cataract surgery where they were given inferior type of sight. And they had to wear very thick glasses to see. The complication rate of normal cataract surgery was very high as about 60%. So only very few proportion of the patients could see. Even if they could see with only thick glasses. So me and my wife, who is also an ophthalmic nurse, and we had a young child, our son, who is now 28 and a doctor. He was breastfeeding, and so we had an old jeep, and we used to cruise from one end of Nepal to another part to teach and show to the doctors that this type of surgery is also possible. But we faced a lot of challenges, and the challenges comes mostly from your own profession. And they were critical about the possibility, the cost of this technique. And I knew that there were a lot of barriers that I had to face and clear up. And this was in mid-'80s, and towards the late '80s, I met my mentor and who became a soulmate, an Australian Fred Hollows, and together we created we helped to create the Fred Hollows Foundation, which is now a world-class international prevention of blindness program, working in about 28 countries. But the idea was to clear these barriers and to create a smart surgical technique which could be locally applicable. So I had to get into these places to find what is the best suitable technique. That was one issue. And the second issue was look at the consumables. The cost of consumables are very high. For example, one of the basic things that you need for this surgery is the intraocular lenses. Those days, the cost of the intraocular lens was about $200 or more. And giving $200 for one patient was out of context. So Fred and I had a wild dream of trying to establish a manufacturing unit in Nepal. And a second was done in Eritrea, in a very difficult places of the world. Two difficult countries, war-trodden and ours politically unstable country. But we were able to do that, and we were able to bring the cost of the intraocular lenses down to $2 from $200. So the people who needed state-of-the-art cataract surgery went into millions from few hundreds. So that was, I think, a great public health breakthrough. And the surgical technique now is very simple. And in Nepal, a lot of people come and learn it, and people from other developed countries also learn. And I like to remember a great team that I have back in Kathmandu, 400 strong boys and girls who support me. And in this room, I have my partner now, Dr. Jeff Devin. Can you stand up? And yeah. And two beautiful people, Job and Emily from the Himalayan Cataract Project. And together, we are helping to take this package of our system of eye care delivery, which are called achievable, sustainable, and still of high quality. And we are trying to replicate this in probably about at least 10 countries. And we have already been successful with this. And just to let you know that eye care can be a great model for sustainable intervention of health. Probably the most cost-effective health intervention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A number of you are connected to Australia and have mentioned it. We have the former Prime Minister of Australia here, Kevin Rudd, who runs our Policy Institute here and was a great leader on development aid and very involved in the entire region. Muzoon, I have been throughout Syria. I've been throughout the camps in Jordan and Lebanon in my work with the United Nations. This is a place where people lose hope. And there you are. Your friends are getting married very young. People are losing hope. They don't have hope for their future. Some are getting radicalized. And you decide you're going to transform the world from a refugee camp. Tell us how this happened.
First of all, I would like to thank Asia Society for this great and precious opportunity to see these inspirational people and to also to share with you my experience. In fact, when I was in Syria, when I was 9th grade, it is so important here in Syria. You should study very hard for this year. I was studying very hard. As you know, the situation in Syria, it is so hard when the war started there. So, but I was studying really hard. I told myself I want to pass this year because I know by my education, I can do anything I want. The education, because I believe by education I can build a strong future. But as you know, everything started to be hard in many sides of life. So my family decided to go to Jordan. It is a country so close on the border with my country to live in the camps. In fact, I was so sad to leave Syria, first to leave my education there. Also, I was studying really hard. So when I left Syria, I was so sad, but I said this is a safe place for my family. As you know, education, it is so important, but maybe if I died, then I will lose my life and I lose my education. So I said that's maybe better for my family. But I was worried about if I thought maybe I will not get a chance to complete my education in a place like the camps. So when I arrived the camp, in fact, it was such a strange place and everything hard because everything from the beginning, it is hard thing. It is hard to start something, especially when you start this thing and you don't want to start it. So I was a bit worried about everything in the camps, especially about my education. So when I arrived the camp, I knew that I can complete my education in the camps. challenges. So I was so happy. So I knew that if I got in my education, then I can do anything I want. So when I found education, I saw all the challenges and all difficulties, nothing from getting in my right of education. So I knew that it is the greatest step in my life to complete my dreams and hopes by my education. So when I enrolled inside the school in the camps, first in Zatri camp, I was so happy and to meet new teachers and new friends. But in fact, I was amazed and I was so sad to see many girls like my age who think the education it is not important, who think the education it is not the priority, who thinks the early marriage is the best way for their future and their life. So and just the girls, they come to school just to maybe to know new friends and just maybe one day and they drop out of school. So I said, why these girls like my age they don't like school? Because I'm so sad to see girls from my country who think the education it is not important. We need to educate a generation. So I told myself, never give up. I should be positive in this community. I don't want to be a negative person in my to my country or to be not educated person. So I should be a strong person in this community. I said I want to do something. I know that, to be honest, the change is difficult, but not impossible. So if everybody said that, I cannot do anything, so then we cannot make a change and we cannot improve our life. So I knew that I will face many challenges, many difficulties in this campaign for education, but I told myself I should start. I should start this campaign, then I can maybe make good thing for this children and to help them to get in their right of education. So first I started my campaign in my classes with my friends. Also I spoke with girls who wanted to get married. I told them we can do anything after education. First we should get in our right of education, then we can do anything we want. So I told them and I give them some advice to help them to know the value of education, because we don't need just one person educated. We need to all the community to be educated people. We want to go back to Syria strong people. We want to rebuild our country by our books and pens. We don't want to rebuild our country by bombs and bullets. Without knowledge, we are nothing. So I didn't want to see people who lost hope, their hopes and dreams. So I don't want to be victims. So I want to be role model. I want to get in my rights, especially my right of education, because education it is the basic human rights. If I got in my education, then I can get in other rights as well. So first I started to do that widely inside the school, outside the school, with organizations as well. Also I did that any place and time, because education it is not just important in a specific place or time. No, the education is important any time and place. So I was so happy when I started my campaign to see many girls who went to school again and got in their right of education. Also, I saw many people who didn't hear me. That's sure, we can find people who maybe cannot hear me and maybe they see these thoughts and ideas about education are not important things. I heard from people, it is not your duty to tell us to send our children to schools. So I spoke with their parents, because you know the parents, they have the influence in their children, especially in the Arab world. So when the most of parents who think the girl she should just get married and school is not important for the girl. So I didn't want to just to look the girl as a mother. We want to look to her as a teacher, as a doctor or engineer. I knew that when I started my campaign, it is hard to change these customs and the traditions from hundreds of years, but I wanted to change this misconceptions in this society, because maybe if just I spoke with a small group of people, I just helped this small group of people. But if I changed these misconceptions, then that will be with longer, that will make more change in this community. So also I faced the biggest problem in the camp, as you said, our challenges. One of the biggest challenges in the camp was the early marriage. It affects negatively on education, also not just on the education and everything. So I tried my best to convince these girls to stop early marriage and to get in their education. I can get married anytime I want, but first I should get an education. But if I lost education, then I will lose everything. So in my campaign, that means to me everything, especially it is my honor to be like activist for education, because education is everything, is the future. And with my education, then I cannot help myself, I cannot help my community, I cannot help my country. So with education and knowledge, I'm strong person. I'm not a negative person in my community. So this campaign means to me a lot. Also, when you help person to go back to school or get in knowledge, as you give this person the future. So as I said, the education is everything in our life, and it's great to help people to get in this right. And I don't want also to see children of my country victims. I want them to get in their rights. Also, I'm really sad to see many of children of my country lost their rights, especially the right of education, who are under the war, who are across all over the world. So we need to, I wanted also to show all over the world when I spoke in interviews, to show them that's right, we are refugees, but we have hopes and dreams as well. Because if you think I'm refugee, most of people, they think if I am refugee, I lost everything. No, I wanted to show the people the name refugee is a strong name. As a refugee, I'm here now. I should get in my education. I should do something. And also, I want to see your help and support. As we saw now, the help from Asia Society, it is such a great motivation to for me, for my campaign as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Who would think that much passion could fit inside that package? That is fabulous. So we're almost out of time. I'm going to ask one last question. You can each jump in. I'll give you 1 second to think about it. I'm going to ask you if you could have dinner with anyone in all of human history, including living now or past, who would it be and why? Don't overthink it. But just as we say that, I was just reading in Chernoff's book about John D. Rockefeller, that the Rockefellers created a scholar rescue program in World War II for scholars who were being persecuted or displaced or refugees during World War II. And this created, even in the first group, 5 Nobel Prize winners who would have been lost. It was an incredible program, just a footnote in the many hundreds of great things. Charles Rockefeller is here, that's why I'm pointing to him, but that your great-great-grandfather inspired and did, and your grandfather and your father, and all of them. So, okay, so who would like to jump in first? Who comes to mind? Durreen?
For me, it will be Martin Luther King, because he really did bring the notion that the time was now to make the change. And I think with the work that we're doing in bringing sort of finance and development, I think the time is now. And he did the impossible, and we are doing the impossible. So we'd love to have dinner with him.
Wonderful. Anyone else have someone they're thinking of having dinner with?
I'd like to have dinner with Bill Gates and convince him that if he gives us $100 million, I can eradicate the blindness in this world.
Wow. Excellent. Yes. Do you have a mic?
In fact, Malala Yousafzai, because Malala means to me a lot, and she is really inspirational girl. And we always learn from girl like Malala, because she is amazing girl, and she suffered a lot to fight for the right of education.
Have you ever met her?
Yes, sure. I'm friends with her.
Well, good.
Yeah.
And you want to?
I wanted to see her
More time.
now, but she is a bit busy in her
Yeah.
exams right now. So.
She never misses school. Anyone else? I know President Obama invited her to the White House, and she gave the reply, "I'm sorry, I cannot. I'm in exams." The first time. Soo-Man, who would you want to have dinner with?
My father.
Why?
He died, and so he was so. He was a Christian, so that I can be a Christian too. Then I learned that he was not successful in our normal life. That's why I can make success. So he taught me how to live, how to think about other people, about Christ and God. So that's.
Did he live to see your success?
A little.
The beginning.
Yes.
Wonderful. Marita?
Well, a living person I'd like to meet is Elon Musk, because I love how he just comes up with amazing new technologies and then galvanizes people to work with him to bring it to the world. And he's always got new ideas and new plans, and communities of people around the world just start working together, like on the Hyperloop project, SpaceX, revolutionizing batteries, the electric car industry. It's just so inspiring how he can do that, and I'd love to learn more about how he does that so that I can emulate that. But a dead person I'd love to meet is Steve Jobs, because he was a really big inspiration to me when I was a teenager. How he managed to bring all these innovations to the world. He democratized technology by giving it to us in our hands. He made things that were useful to people with disabilities useful to everyone, so that it became 20 times cheaper for people with disabilities. And he revolutionized so many industries, and that was just so
Wonderful.
inspiring to me.
Yes. Ahmad?
Can I have a party?
Who would be at your dinner party?
I would like to have a dinner with Vivaldi, Maestro Ebro, and Suzuki. They're the three people who showed me the way and proved the transformative power of music in the lives of children and communities. That's I'm following their steps in terms of bringing music to the most marginalized communities of our society.
Wonderful. You can have a small dinner party too.
I think I would. There's so many people I would probably have dinner with, apart from Adam and Eve. I would.
And ask what went wrong.
Definitely.
What happened?
I would. Yes, since then, 34 million years ago, but 43 million. But I would have dinner with the Rockefeller to first of all share very briefly with the world how it was possible to reach that level of bringing so many good people together and doing so many good things and creating so many good doing around the globe, and how to be able to sustain that globally, because the world still needs so much integration and to work jointly towards challenges, and then to create more ways to have a better balance. What the world is lacking is good conductors, basically good balance and good ways to preserve the momentum of good things. It's not a good and evil fight, and yin and yang. That's in the history of mankind. It's more of how do we look at the future, learning from our past and then probably learning from our present as well. It's people who create good things sometimes are not geniuses. They just have the power to imagine and the goodwill, and also it's the why, it's not the how. So it'll be one of them.
Thank you. And Karim, you really ended that on a beautiful note, mentioning the Rockefeller family. It's our 60th anniversary. And more than 150 years ago, the original Rockefeller, when he was poor, when he had nothing, he always gave a portion of his salary to help people. And one of his earliest notes is giving money to a former slave, so the former slave could buy the freedom of his wife, who was still a slave. This is in 1850. And that philanthropic route really has changed so many things in the world through that DNA that he instilled in his entire family. So thank you. Please join me in giving a round of applause. So tonight at Game Changers at the UN, you now have many friends. You won't be alone in the room, and you now know each other. And we're also hatching ways to really begin to bring the Game Changers community together in new ways, so you can have cultivate some revolutions between each other and with some of the other game changers in the world. So you'll see more in this space as we develop this program. Thank you so much.